and Gabe being arrested, and James Coates being thrown in prison, and Tim Stevens, and all this stuff. Maybe this is the beginning.
Well, welcome to Chinook Podcast. Chinook Podcast is a place where we are expecting working and expecting that the winds of the Holy Spirit will move in Western Canada. We're working and praying. We're teaching, we're speaking God's Word, and we're expecting to see the Holy Spirit thaw out the frozen wastelands of northwestern Canada. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so today we've got a special guest on our podcast, Toby Sumpter, Pastor Toby Sumpter from Moscow, Idaho.
Thanks for having me.
And since Brad is in the patch today, Jesse Penner will be our third host.
Yeah, Jesse Penner.
So
Jesse Penner's here. He's trying not to say anything, I think. He was lobbying for a particular word on his replacement of Brad. He was lobbying for the word upgrade.
Oh yeah, that's right. So, so he's an upgrade on Brad. Or, I think we decided on substitution.
Yeah, substitution, not penal substitution, just substitution.
That's right.
I know when decisions are made so as to not hurt someone else's feelings, whether they're mine or Brad's that are not being hurt. We'll leave up to debate.
Yeah, well, so long as no one's hurt, then we're good to go.
Yeah, there we go.
Canadians are very sensitive people, I hear.
That's right. We say sorry a lot.
I'm sorry you heard that.
So for anyone who doesn't know, Jesse Penner is a deacon at Christ Covenant Church, and he's a son-in-law to Jamie.
It's true. It's true, and I still like him, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
so.
Okay, let's go through book reviews quick. We'll start with Jamie, then move to Toby, then Jesse, then myself.
All right. The book that I'm going to recommend, if you're familiar with the Orson Scott Card world, Ender's Game, Ender's Shadow, and all the books that sprang from those ones, I want to recommend a prequel that he has written, in which he wrote the stories of Ender's mom and dad when they were young and meeting, and a couple other key components later in the story come into this. It's called First Meetings by Orson Scott Card. There's 3 stories that provide deep background for what goes on in the Enderverse. So let me commend that to you. First Meetings by Orson Scott Card.
Right. Sounds like a book I should read.
Yeah, there you go.
So this was just sprung on me a minute ago, but I'm gonna recommend, if you haven't read or haven't read in a long time, I just finished Return of the King by J.R.R. Tolkien, and the thing that I want to flag for you is even if you think you know the story, maybe particularly because you know the film version that Peter Jackson did, you don't know the whole story of Return of the King, because the movie ends actually halfway through the book.
Yeah.
The second half of the book, I would argue, is actually one of the most important parts of the book. I'm also wondering if there could have been any number of reasons. The movie was already too long, and then it would have been like 3 hours longer in order to finish the whole story. I understand the practical limitations that Peter Jackson was working with, but I actually think there's got to have also been some cultural pressures not to finish the story, because that's actually where Frodo and Sam and Merry and Pippin go home. And what they find is that basically the Shire has been taken over by socialism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is the story.
Which would have been a little bit challenging, I think, for moderns to take. It's a socialism run by a significantly weakened sorcerer, Saruman. But nevertheless, I commend it to you. There's some great lines in there where the hobbits come home and find that there's all kinds of petty tyrannies that have taken over the Shire. But the hobbits have no patience for such things and quickly rid the Shire of all those socialistic tyrannies. The sort of thing that we all need a lot more of in North America.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need the right guy to make that last movie.
We need it especially here in Canada.
Yep.
And Jesse.
So, a book that I'm reading right now, it kind of came into my hands actually through the company that I work for, so I just decided that I'd give it a read. It's by an Olympian, Heather Moisey. She's a 2-time gold medalist, and it's called Redefining Realistic. And the idea is that we often really don't have clear views of what kinds of potential we can be capable of, and so we shut down a lot of things that maybe could be really good things if we gave them a chance. And if we said, well, maybe if I didn't look at what I'm doing as either a pass or a fail or a bullseye or a miss, and instead said, well, how close can I get? And started operating that way, we would see we can do a lot more things than we think we can. And the difference between somebody who advances like a pyramid from a baseline of, say, a lot of people that can maybe make a plan versus that small percentage difference of people that actually execute on the plan. Each level you get up the pyramid, the difference between you and the previous group is just a small margin of people that didn't make it to the next pyramid level, right? So just really interesting for people if they're looking to maybe grow and do more things. It's been an interesting read so far.
What's that called?
It is called Redefining Realistic.
Okay. The angels.
There's some beautiful
There's
singing.
angels in here.
So we're podcasting while people are cleaning the church building.
Yeah. And singing.
Yeah. Yes.
And singing, which is great.
Oh man, we took all the numinous out of it.
All right, and then my book for today is, so I've been thinking about a number of books that can help like young men advance in their faith if they're kind of at the start, if they want to grow in holiness. So I've been encouraging people to read Confessions by St. Augustine. Mm-hmm. I would say that another book that I would encourage people to read is St. Athanasius on the Incarnation. Mm-hmm. It's a great defense of the Incarnation, and I think there's a lot of content in here that would really help young men to understand the victory that Christ has won, and how that victory can impact their lives.
Awesome.
Yeah.
He's like one of the early post-mills.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
He's like, can't you see that we're winning?
Yeah.
And he's writing in the 300s.
Yeah.
It's interesting thinking about that in terms of eschatology stuff, because eschatology, all the fields of eschatology, they all claim Augustine. The pre-mills claim him, the all-mills claim him, the post-mills claim him.
Yeah.
And Athanasius is particularly postmillennial as well. So, yeah. Athanasius on the Incarnation with an introduction by C.S. Lewis, because that's what makes the book as well.
Does your book have the appendix on the Psalms?
I'm not sure.
Because the one I have has an appendix as a letter that he wrote to a young man on the Psalms, and that's worth the price of the book too.
Okay.
Actually, it's
I've not actually read that.
Yeah, it's a glorious overview of the Psalms, and you can just see how Athanasius clearly knew the Psalms really well, but he's just talking about how useful the Psalms are to all of life, and he just rattles off. He's like, so if you're going through hard times, then sing Psalm such and such, such and such, such and such.
Yeah.
And if you just had a glorious victory, sing Psalm such and such, such and such, such, and it just rattles off. And if you're surrounded by enemies and you think you're going to die, sing Psalm. And it's really, really good.
That's good. I'll have to make sure to actually read that now.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, the Psalms are really good for that.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's get launched on this interview.
Yeah, Toby, why don't you, if you don't mind, give us a little bit of a history of where did you come from? Like, you were obviously young once.
It's
true. And you probably still are, depending on who you're standing by.
That's right. So I don't know how far you want me to go back, but I grew up all over. I was born in Portland, Oregon, lived for a number of years in Southern California, Alaska for 5 years, and then I went to high school in Maryland. So that's
kind of all over.
All over, like I said. And then I jumped ship and went out to Moscow, Idaho in 1998 to go to New St. Andrews College. So I've been in Moscow nearly ever since. I left for 2 years. I went to seminary in South Carolina from 06 to 08. I went to Erskine Theological Seminary down in South Carolina. But basically, I've been in Moscow from 1998.
New St. Andrews must have been really early in their history.
It was. I think it was the 5th year
Okay.
that it existed. So
All right.
I visited in the spring of '98 when I was a senior in high school, and Becca Merkel I actually was there. I think maybe for one of the last disputatios of the school year, just the kind of assembly thing they did.
Right.
And there was maybe 20 people
Right.
there. They were meeting in Logos School in one of the classrooms, and Becca Merkel was very great with child, giving her senior thesis defense. And I don't remember anything about it other than just thinking, golly, that woman's about to give birth. But she's like giving a thesis defense in front of 20 people, and I just thought, these people are serious. and it was kind of a glorious picture though of so she's a married woman and she's about to have a baby, but she's also like academically is really pressing, and I love that combo of it's like they're serious about learning and they're serious about family and serious about babies, and I just really it was really intriguing. So anyways, I visited, and then that was part of what sold me. When I think they had maybe about 12 students that year before, and my class coming in I think had 24.
Right, so 100% increase.
more than doubled the size of the whole school. I mean,
Right.
of course, it was 34, 36 students in the whole school. And for the 4 years that I went to New St. Andrews, we met in Chris Schleck's house, who was one of the professors who bought a largish old house that had a couple of big classrooms and an open room sort of on the main floor. And so the Schlecks could live upstairs and had some boarders. And the school sort of met on the main level, and and then that's where I went to school. So that was before they had any of their own buildings, but it was really, really glorious.
Awesome.
Am I getting to what you wanted me to say?
Yeah. You grew up in a pastor's house, right?
I did.
Yeah.
My dad is an ordained minister in the Orthodox Presbyterian Church, OPC. And he came to the Lord in college, and finished his undergrad at Portland State University in Portland, and landed at a OPC church there, where the pastor started discipling him, and then basically encouraged him to go down to seminary in Southern California at Westminster, which was the new Reformed seminary at the time in the early '80s. So that's how I was there, and then my folks are actually from Alaska. And so the first church my dad helped pastor and plant was a little OPC church plant north of Anchorage, and that we moved up in 1989.
Right.
Oh, wow.
And we were up there for 5 years, helping that church get off the ground. It's still there. And then after a few years, my dad took a call to a different church in Maryland. And so I grew up in the Reformed faith, so I tell people, in many ways, my dad and my family, my church upbringing, I was given, my testimonies, I don't remember when I first believed.
Yeah.
My dad and mom were teaching me the gospel from jump. My dad was studying baptism and covenant theology, and so he was at a Presbyterian church, but was trying to figure out the whole baptism thing.
Right.
And so I've studied it for a few years. And when he finally came to Presbyterian convictions, I was 4. And then I had 2 younger brothers that were like 2 and 1. And so went to the pastors of the Presbyterian church we were at and said, I'm ready to get them all baptized. But he said, but Toby's already Christian. He can answer the questions himself. And so one of my earliest memories, which is really fun to me, is actually my mom taking me to meet with a pastor and an elder. And how they do it in traditional Presbyterian churches, of course, is that if you profess faith, then that's how they usually start taking communion at your profession of faith rather than right when you're baptized or shortly thereafter. And so I did all of that when I was 4.5. And so I don't really even remember not taking communion.
Right.
I know I didn't, but it was like one of my earliest memories is getting interviewed by the pastor and an elder, and then me getting baptized and making profession of faith all at the same time and becoming a communicant member in this OPC church. But anyways, that's what I grew up with. And then but I tell people that I think one of the great gifts of Pastor Doug Wilson in Moscow and the sort of surrounding culture is taking a ton of Reformed theology and making it extremely practical.
Yeah.
And so I think of my childhood and growing up in OPC church, and my dad is just this glorious, being given a ton of great teaching, and I saw a lot of practical stuff lived out really well. My folks' marriage is beautiful and sweet, and we had a happy home, and it was Christian and hospitality and all those things. But then coming out to New St. Andrews, it was like taking a bunch of that and then saying, but have you ever tried this?
Right.
Yeah.
Watch this. And so a whole bunch more application and pushing it into the corners
Right.
and has been one of the greatest gifts.
Yeah, that's great. So you've been in that Moscow environment for quite a long time. We were talking earlier, and I was talking to you about the way that people you go to visit, you go down there for a conference,
Right.
and you see like there's just everything is happening, lots of stuff is going on,
Right.
and it blows people's minds when they encounter it, and they come home and they say, oh my, we really need to implement this and this and this. Now you've been there for the development of this and this and this and this, all these different things. Maybe walk us through some of that time. How long was it before Christchurch planted another church in town? That would have been Trinity, right? And you were involved with that.
Yeah. So the first, I think the first church they planted was in 2003, and it was
2003.
Trinity. They also had something to do with the Christchurch Spokane as well, and I don't remember exactly where that fits in the timeline.
Right.
But Trinity was the first one locally.
Yeah.
And we were happy members of Christchurch, and when the elders said, "Hey, we're going to plant another church," my wife and I thought, "Well, let's help." And so we helped with that. Peter Lightheart helped plant that church. He was the lead there. And so we were just happy members that went with the plant. But yeah, it's been one of the things that's, it can be deceiving to visit and think, wow, they do so much. And, I wonder how do they run all that or whatever. Right. And the really short answer is we don't. It's always hilarious when there's some new interview or article that comes out that intimates that Pastor Doug Wilson runs a media empire or runs everything, and everybody that knows him just bursts out laughing. It's just like that's not his style anyways, but it's not that way at all. But I would say a lot of little things along the way. When I got there in '98, I think they had just started psalm singing. I think they got the old red Psalter hymnal.
Yeah, I remember it.
And we're learning, some of the psalms, metrical psalms, and then but it was like those were the early days of having a psalm sing on once a month on a Sunday night. We'd get together in somebody's house and learn some parts and sing a psalm together. But I would say that the culture actually is very much the centerpiece is Sunday morning worship, and everything else is if you want to.
Okay. So it wasn't the church saying getting together and saying, oh, we really need to figure out how to do psalm sings.
Well, it was cheerleaded.
It was okay,
but it was but not required, and I think you'd have a percentage of the church that would I don't know, for whatever reason did something else on a Sunday night.
Right.
But a pile of people would come, and And then it was the kind of thing where it was so much fun, and the part singing was fun, and it just like blew your mind, like, wow, none of us are any good at singing, but that sounded decent.
That was really appealing.
We're not even a choir, and this person made us sound decent. Like, that's really fun. Let's do that again. Yeah. And so it's very much a get to, not a got to culture.
Okay.
We just say basically the main event is Sunday morning worship. Come to church on Sunday, worship the Lord, gather with your families, and then everything else is if you want to. And we offer some things, and some of it is offered by the church, like a psalm sing. But a lot of what you see actually happening in the community now is just people doing stuff. And Pastor Doug actually models a lot of that himself. I mean, he just, writes books, accidentally for fun, Oops, accidentally.
He wasn't commissioned to do that by his counsel.
No, he was just doing it. Yeah. And it just does it. And then, Canon Press was kind of grew out of that, and then there was a time where it was more closely connected to the church, and then it was sort of spun off and is sort of its own thing now. But Doug's on the board, and there's guys from the church that are on the board, and Nate Wilson and Aaron Wrench, I think, are the main spearheads running it, but it's just people doing stuff. And meanwhile, lots of other people have started doing stuff too, and so there's businesses and other ministries and other and schools and co-ops, and there's my wife and I helped start a homeschool co-op many years ago called White Horse Hall, and it's still going. And even though we have transferred over to Logos School, and that's where our kids have all finished or are finishing high school, and then you get businesses, sports. There's lots of sports going on. Clubs. Dads are just like, I want my son to learn how to play baseball, and so I'm going to coach a team, or I'm going to start a league, or I want my son to learn rugby, so I'm going to start a league, or we want our daughters to do dance lessons, or ballet or something like that. So let's hire this lady to teach our daughters ballet, and here's we want to do a play. We're going to do a play, and we're going to start a drama club, a theater club, and now there's going to be a play, or we want to start an orchestra or an ensemble, or we want our kids to learn musical instruments or choirs or whatever. And so I tell people, like, now it's like, I mean, if you wanted to, you could do something every night of the week, like if you wanted to. And of course, you can't function that way.
Right.
So you have to pick your things. But
we have people who have come to our church exhausted by that kind of thing and saying, boy, it's so good. We have a service on Sunday.
Yeah. No, that's why. But I think it's important actually that as far as the church is concerned, that it's really it. Like we exist to worship the Lord,
right,
and encourage and teach obedience. But there's piles of ways to do that and apply it.
Yeah.
That's good.
One thing that I find interesting about Nehemiah, and I think in Nehemiah 3, it says that and they completed the work because God gave the people a mind to do the work. Mm-hmm. And any church where you see things happening, it's not because the pastors run everything, but it's because God has given the people a mind to do the work,
right,
and the unity to do it.
Right. Yeah. There's a general cheerleading of let's be fruitful, let's work hard, let's whatever God gives you the strength and energy and resources to do it with all your might and do it for the kingdom. Mm-hmm. And but then it's sort of like, and 1, 2, 3, break.
Joshua Dreger.
I did put that on silent. I don't know how.
But
see right there, you can see do not disturb.
But it's a lot of stuff is just it's just people having a mind to the work, having a heart for the work, and I think it's modeled by leaders and leadership, but it's not. We have a very sort of it's a get to, if you want to, feel free to do it kind of thing. But as people have both had raised families, and then those kids have wanted to stay and remain part of a lot of the community. Not all of them do, but a lot of them do. And then they they have to start businesses, or they join businesses, and God's just blessed and allowed for other businesses to start. And that's just created a culture, an atmosphere, sort of this entrepreneurial spirit of, businesses, sports, hobbies, activities, family things. And but just little by little, it's grown. So there's piles and piles of things going on now, and piles of things that I don't even know about.
Right.
going on, and Pastor Doug doesn't know about going on, but it's really glorious.
Yeah, that's really quite something, because there's that culture of people coming, and then the thing they want to do, they're encouraged to go and press on and do it and invite people over. Maybe other people want to do it too.
Right.
That kind of thing is really good. But you folks also have experienced such a, especially in recent years, an expansion of the church and the churches that grow out. I remember asking you a couple of years ago how many churches are in the local area, and you sat and you figured for about a minute and a half, and you were numbered on your fingers, and you said, well, I think there's about 11 places where on a Sunday morning you'll hear the word preached by someone who came from here in the churches around here.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty remarkable. Yeah. I mean, we've had several, I would say, sort of influxes of people over the years, but following 2020, it sort of like went bonkers.
Huge.
Yeah, I think with the COVID thing and just the woke madness and all combined into this thing where people are, and people were, there was a great, sorting going on, I think, in a lot of places. People moving, saying, oh, I don't feel safe here. I don't feel, nobody, I don't have a church. I don't have a, school that I can trust if everything goes crazy. And so people were moving all over the place, but one of the places they were landing was in Moscow. And I think we planted Trinity in 2003. I was there as an attender, and then I was there as a pastor for about 10 years from after I got back from seminary from 2008 to 2018. And around in there, Christ Church started another, I think they had 2 services going, and then started a third service at a different location, but had its own preacher called Christ Church Downtown. And in 2018, I took an associate position with Pastor Doug at Christ Church and started assisting him. And then right after COVID, as things really started blowing up, that downtown service became the obvious place to create more room. And so I started preaching at a second downtown service. It was that downtown service, but just had a second service.
Okay.
And then within about, 3 months, it had filled up already. And the elders said, let's just plant that. And so those 2 services were planted as King's Cross in 2021.
Okay.
And so it's a really odd church plant. It's odd to start a church with 300 people.
Yeah.
But that's what we did. And so we started with 302 services, and now we're 3.5 years in on King's Cross, and in the 700s on Sunday morning. And we have we have a main service at the field house with about 500 or 600 people, and then we started another service at a theater downtown with about 200 people. And but meanwhile, while we were doing that, Christ Church started another downtown service.
Right.
And that downtown service was led by Ben Zorns and Ben Merkel. And that downtown service has just particularized as a new church called Living Stone Reformed Church.
Right.
Yeah.
That Ben Zorns is leading. And so, meanwhile, we also planted a church in Troy, Idaho, which is just 10 miles east of town. And Pastor Josh Doctor is a Greyfriar grad, and he's in the process of finishing his ordination, but is the lead guy there, and there's about 150, I think, out there in Troy. Mm-hmm. And we're working on a potlatch service now, which is potlatch is about 20 miles north. So as people have moved in, many of them land in town, but a decent number of them also land in some of the bedroom communities around town. And so because of that, we've got these opportunity to plant churches out there. So Lord willing, we'll have something out in Potlatch probably in the next year. Meanwhile, Trinity Reformed Church is still going, and they have a plant called Emmanuel Reformed Church. And then there's also one other service. We have a Lewiston church. That one got planted somewhere in there. I forgot that one in my story. Lewiston's 30 miles south, a little bit kind of out of the immediate vicinity, though there's still a fair bit of connection there. But when it was originally planted, it was planted by the Christchurch elders actually invited Moscow folks that if they wanted to, they didn't mind the drive, it'd be encouraging to the Lewiston folks.
Right.
If they had extra numbers and voices and stuff. Well, after doing that for many years, they created some close connections, and the Lewiston elders decided to have a service start in Moscow. It's just funny how these things.
So you've got 1, 2, 3,
Yeah, so
4 church planting.
yeah,
churches.
so, exactly. So it's just so that's why when you asked me how many services there were, I have to sort of count again. I was like, well, I think there's 1, 2, 3, but there's probably about 10 to 12 services, and Christchurch has 3 services on a Sunday morning in their building that Doug preaches, and I do 2. I think Trinity does 2 plus their church plant. And anyways, and so it's just wild and fun.
Awesome.
Do you have any questions, Jesse, or thoughts on this?
Well, I have lots of thoughts, but they're all just running around in my head.
Okay.
It's very interesting to hear how it's taken off, because we were talking before the podcast how a lot of things happen, and we tend to think in straight lines. If we're going to do something, change a career, or build something, we tend to want to plan it and see stage by stage. Well, how are we going to get there? But a lot of things that actually develop just happen indirectly. And so that sounds like a lot of what's going on with Moscow. There's some things that have been very instrumental in creating a good environment, good culture there. And it's attracted people that like that and like to push things out into the corners, as you were saying, with good theology. Well, how do we make that part of, how do we make that show up in sports and dance
Right.
and small business
Right.
and all of those other areas? And it's things that are driven because people want that.
Right.
And that's one of the most powerful forces I think there is when things get accomplished, not because I can make my objectives deployed out to other people, but when those are their desires,
Right.
and they're putting their thought and their initiative and their emotional energy into those things, and it becomes a magnet. And so it sounds like that's a lot of what's happening. And some of my thoughts are, I've thought for a while that Grand Prairie is similar. Like, I've never been to Moscow. I've entertained ideas and thoughts. I'd like to go sometime, but I've thought for a while that Grand Prairie seems to me to kind of have potential to be like a Moscow, but in Canada. If we have Christians that are on board with the kingship of Christ, if we have people that are passionate about seeing that happen in all of life, if we have people that want their kids' education to actually look like Christ is king, look like their kids' sports and programs, Christ is king there, right? And we want to see our children push that out into the corners of their world. Like attracts like. And so, or birds of a feather flock together. And if you become known as a place where that's happening,
Right.
It's just amazing in the world we live in, where all of a sudden, from all over the country, from all over the world, you get people showing up who want to get behind that. And so I like hearing all of that.
I think that's a good way to describe it. George Gilder, in one of his books, describes the free market or capitalism. He says we often get this wrong. He said, but we really ought to understand that free markets actually really function as gift-giving economies. He says it's not about greed; it's about giving good gifts. He says the entrepreneur is actually the one who thinks about what he could give the world to bless it.
Right.
And so a really great entrepreneur brings something to the market and says, here, I've got this gift. I think that you would love this product, this service. Mm-hmm. And he says, and the test is, of course, he says, is it a good enough gift that someone is willing to give a gift in return, such that you can keep giving the gift. Mm-hmm. And so the entrepreneur gives in order to give again. and to keep giving. And really good entrepreneurs are really, really sharp. And so someone comes along like Steve Jobs and says, you know what you need is an iPhone. This is going to bless your socks off. This is, but I think in many ways, what you just said, Jess, is exactly right. That I think the church community is thinking sort of in terms of entrepreneurship or sort of a free market mindset, which is like, why do people do the things that they do? Is because they want to. And they see it as a benefit and a blessing to themselves, and oftentimes see it as a benefit and a blessing to neighbors and other people around. And in a free market, you can give something for a little while, and then somebody comes up with something better. And that's part of the fun is, oh, that's even better, thanks. Drop that, go to the other thing. It's not about me. It's not about us. It's about the goals that we have as a community and blessing and the glory of God. And I think it's the same thing. Oftentimes churches have this mindset of like a program mindset.
Yeah.
We have all these programs that we have to do. But when you have programs that God doesn't require,
Yeah.
you can end up in a weird way where you're actually kind of enslaved to the programs.
Yes.
And now we have to find someone that will lead that program, and we have to find someone to lead that program, and it's like nobody wants to lead the program, but we have to do the program, and it becomes this burden.
Yes.
Rather than it just being like, basically what we do as a church is we worship God on the Lord's Day, because that's what we got to do.
Yeah.
We worship the Lord. We renew covenant, and then it's like, and then the Great Commission is sort of wide open.
Yeah, we send our people out to go and work.
Yeah, and they do what they want to do, and they do according to their gifts and according to their desires, all under the lordship of Christ. And then you're right; it's a lot more. This is what I love, and this is what I want to do. This is how I want to bless my kids. This is how I want to bless my neighbors. And and sometimes it blows up and it's really, really big, and everybody else wants to do it too. And other times it's just a little thing that you do for 6 weeks or you do for a year for your own, and thank the Lord.
And it's very different than how church has been treated in the evangelical West, where church has almost been looked at like, well, if we want to get people in the doors, we've got to treat our people coming into the doors like customers.
Right.
And we got to offer the best services.
Right.
So we got to offer the best music.
Right.
We got to have the best air conditioning. We got to have the best child care.
Right.
We got to have the best espresso bar.
Yeah.
During or after the service.
Right.
If we offer the best stuff,
Right.
we'll get people coming in and they'll come through the door,
Right.
and they'll hear about Jesus,
Right.
as if that's all they need.
Right.
Right. But really what Christians, I think, have been longing and thirsting for is the truth that Christ is King all over everything, and they want to live like that, right? And I think one of the sad things has been that we've seen a trend in the Western church where, as long as you make the acknowledgement that Jesus comes to forgive sins, that's essentially what being a Christian is, right? But being a Christian is so much more than that. And if we have boredom in evangelicalism over Christianity, it's because that's been what we've sold.
Yeah, that's what we've been selling as though this is Christianity, when it's really that much of it.
Yeah, and Christianity is a place where freedom and opportunity and blessing and flourishing and life just explodes.
Right. It's also, and it's the way you put it is exactly right. Where you have, it's almost like we've been discipling evangelical Christians into socialism.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's all about the programs that are provided. We have the best. We have the best programs, the best coffee bar, the best childcare. Free childcare, free.
Yes.
That sounds like
It does sound like our politicians.
It sounds like the commie we elected in New York City. I mean,
And the thing is, the world can say, but I can find all those things other places without the God stuff.
Right.
Like I don't need to come here for that.
right. Yeah, but you're exactly right. The gospel is not only that your sins have been forgiven, but now you've been set free to work for the glory of God in every area of life. And so it makes sense then that we want to create church cultures that incentivize go out there and take dominion.
Right.
Go out there and do whatever your hand finds it to do, whatever makes your heart sing. That's under the law of God. That's within the law of God. Go for it. And do it with all your might, and let the Lord bless it. And sometimes it'll be just a small mom and pop deal, and sometimes it'll blow up, and it'll be a glorious blessing to many, many people.
Well, and the wonderful thing about it is it's built into people. I believe that if something's going to be done, I want to do it the best. I want it to be the best. Right. So if you bring someone into a place where that's what being a Christian means, it means whatever you're going to do, do it with all your might and make it the best that you can.
Right.
And like run with that. That's actually like a catalyst
Right.
for just wonderful, wonderful things to happen in the world that bless others, right?
I always tell people in the beginning, God created Adam and Eve, and the first thing he gave to Adam, first of all, he told him the menu, because men always are concerned about what's on the menu first. He said, there's food, don't worry. But then the second thing he told Adam was, he actually gave him a treasure map. He said, there's a river running out of this garden,
Right.
and it divides into 4. And the first one goes down to the land of Havilah, where there's gold, and the gold of that land is good. And there's also bdellium and onyx stones, other precious metals. You should go find those. The second river runs down to the land of Assyria, and the third land, or maybe it's Ethiopia, and then Assyria. And then the fourth one is the river Euphrates, and God winks and says, and I'm not even going to tell you where it goes.
Yeah, that's right.
But the whole thing is it's a treasure map.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that Euphrates.
Yeah.
It shows up right in the beginning of the scriptures,
Yeah.
and it shows up right in the end of the scriptures.
Yeah, right.
There's something going on there.
There is. But it's like, so what did God make us for?
Right.
Well, he made us to explore the world. It's a map. Go down the river. Go find the glory. Go find the gold. And he says, and he's already telling them, like, some of the stuff you dig up is better than others. Some of it's gold, and the gold is really good. And there's other precious metals. I was telling, I mentioned this on Crosspolitic recently, but I was reading. Oh, this is actually a George Gilder thing too. I've been reading George Gilder. Maybe I should have done a book report about George Gilder. But Gilder points out that silicon is so we call this area in California Silicon Valley because of all the tech that's blowing up out there. And because we make these microchips out of silicon, and silicon is a naturally occurring element that mostly occurs in sand. You think, down the river to Ethiopia, there was sand. There was piles and piles of silicon, which is an electrical conductor that is one of the most useful electrical conductors in the world that we've been able to discover thus far.
Right.
And God knew it was in the sand.
It's in the sand.
6,000 years ago. It's like, look at the sand. Check out the sand. There's some amazing stuff in the sand. And it's like, but that was intimated in the treasure map. There's gold down that river. What's down that river? Probably some other kinds of gold. Maybe you should check out the sand.
You'll figure it out.
But I think that's part of it is having a vision for, like, that's what God made us for. God made us for that kind of fruitfulness, that kind of discovery, that kind of adventure. And we want to be preaching that kind of gospel. You've been set free, yes, from your sins, yes, from the tyranny of the devil. You don't have to be afraid of death anymore. Now you get to be set free to go dig and discover and invent and create, make beautiful things, make useful things, bless those around you, find what you love, find what God made you for, and be fruitful, multiply, and share it. And that's a kind of culture, though, that's very attractive.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Why don't you let's shift gears a little bit and let's go to Crosspolitic and the rising up of Crosspolitic.
Okay.
Talk to us about how that came about and what it is.
So you're having dominion over the earth through Crosspolitic.
Yeah, that's our little bit of gold. So this is Gabe Wrench's brainchild.
Okay.
In early 2016, He, I think, got the idea that he wanted to do some kind of podcast, a radio show. I think he said he tried to get a radio show going at the University of Idaho radio station, but I don't think they wanted him, conservative Christian, on their radio. So then he thought, well, podcasting, that would be interesting. And he wanted to do something from the jump. He wanted to do something applying Christianity to politics, some kind, to apply the Bible, the biblical worldview to politics. And so he came and he met with me one time, or messaged me or something, and said, hey, Toby, I'm thinking about starting a podcast. Would you be interested in being involved? I want to apply Christianity to politics, Reformed theology to politics. And I don't even know if I knew what a podcast was. I think maybe I'd heard sometimes you put a sermon on a podcast, and I was like, okay, whatever,
right.
Sure, I'll do a podcast. I don't even know if anyways, I didn't know what it was, but I just said, sure, I'd be happy to. And then we started talking about that, and I pretty quickly, as I started to learn more, I thought, this is going to take a little bit more, in order for it to be good, it's got to have a little bit of technical, excellence. And also I just thought, as Gabe and I talked about it, I thought, there's something about the dynamic of a little bit more than two people that kind of creates more of a conversation, a little bit more of a community, and just makes it a little more interesting. And so I suggested, and Gabe agreed, let's try to find a third person and maybe someone with a little bit of other expertise. We immediately thought of David Shannon, aka Chocolate Knox. He had just moved into the community in the last, maybe a year before or something like that. So we'd kind of just gotten to know him a little bit, and so we asked him, and he immediately turned us down and said no. And we bummer. And so then I think we went around and maybe asked one or two more people, and they turned us down. And then I think as we were sort of in desperation, I said, Gabe, what do you think if we go back to Knox and we ask him if there was some way we could use his studio? Because he had a recording studio. So on the side, he would do video and audio editing, and
right.
Which that was his main gig, and still is his main gig. And I said, maybe he would be willing to just give us a lesson or two on his, in his studio, and then we could just use that. So if he doesn't have time to do it, but we could just find a time where he's not there, and maybe he'd let us use it. And so we went back with that proposal, and this time Knox said, well, let's talk. And so we had a conversation with him, and I didn't know this at the time, but apparently he was sort of auditioning us, because he's been involved in television and radio and
right.
all kinds of stuff for a long time, and I think he was sort of testing us to see what would this dynamic be like. And so we met in my office one day and just talked about what we were envisioning for the show and what that might be like and everything. And we just had a blast, us just talking about life and culture and all the rest of it. And afterwards he just said, okay, I'm in. I need a little bit of time to wrap up some projects, but I'll jump in, and we can use my studio. And so that was summer of 2016. Gabe and I did a couple of interviews, just the two of us, I think late summer of 2016 in Gabe's home office. And then Knox invited us into his studio, I think that fall. And we started with just once a week, I think it was Friday afternoons, once a week, just audio like this.
Yeah.
And his studio at that time was actually in this little attic cubby thing above a piano shop.
Okay.
So it just smelled strongly of chemicals and glue and things like that, and it was kind of sometimes noisy, and but that's where we started, and then basically just the goal of sort of applying Christianity to politics. The vision was that basically we thought that for too long, the best that Christianity had, or the best that many Christians had, was like Rush Limbaugh.
Right.
But there was just very few people who were actually explicitly applying the Bible to politics. And so
right.
you had conservative talk radio, which was generally sort of friendly to Christianity,
right.
but not explicitly applying the Bible to politics. And then that was it. And it was so the vision was we wanted to help disciple the church in applying Christianity to politics. So that's why we call it Crosspolitic.
Yeah.
started in 2016. Of course, that was an interesting year because that was Trump's first run.
Right.
And we were all like total skeptics of Trump. We weren't sure. We just knew about him being this, TV personality that, was on his third wife or whatever. And but that was a fun fall to start covering news and just trying to think through, what does the Bible say about this? How do we think about this biblically? And then, of course, he got elected, and that just has been an interesting ride. And so that's and then I think in 2020 we went to video at some point. I don't remember the exact timeline, but
Right.
went to video. Again, normally just had interesting conversations about the news. Occasionally brought on some kind of guest to interview. We have done interviews with a lot of politicians. We've done interviews with other sort of cultural players.
Right.
And but then finally in 2020 we planned to do a conference, which we call the Fight Laugh Feast conference.
Right.
Fight Laugh Feast sort of became our tagline. So we wanted to that sort of kind of embodied the kind of ethos we're kind of going for. So we wanted to fight like Christians in the sense of fight for the truth, be willing to have hard conversations, awkward conversations, ask the difficult questions. But we also wanted to do it with laughter in our hearts, and also recover a feasting culture of so we can argue and then laugh about it and have a beer.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, and try to embody that. So that's what we've been trying to do. We planned our first conference in 2020, and then of course COVID hit, which was really crazy that God did that. And I think in COVID 2020 is probably when we had our most significant explosion
Right.
in listeners and stuff. Right in the middle of the sort of lockdowns and stuff. The law was, at least initially when there was lockdowns, it was all except for essential services.
Right.
And
the church wasn't.
Right. The church wasn't, school wasn't, but pot shops and Planned Parenthoods were.
Yes. Strip joints.
And strip joints and media.
Right.
And so and so we were like, well,
We're media.
we're media. And so it was it was during COVID and the lockdowns that we started doing a daily show.
Right.
We just every day we would just go in and we'd do a show, and it was heavily centered on because almost immediately we're like, something doesn't add up about all this.
Right.
The numbers are weird. The same people that say that the world is global warming is happening and the polar ice caps are going to be melted in 2 years and LA is going to be gone are the same people doing the math on COVID.
That's suspicious.
Yeah, very suspicious. And so that allowed us to connect with some of the early actual doctors and stuff that were questioning the main narrative.
Right.
Jay Bhattacharya.
Jay Bhattacharya was one of the early epidemiologists from Stanford, a Christian, who was questioning the narrative and saying, guys, this is and in all the protocols even, he was like, this is not how we order, like we've been trained that airborne viruses, like there's a certain protocol. We're not even following the protocol. This doesn't make sense. The masks don't work. The vaccine is not, this is not smart. And of course they tried to cancel him. He almost lost his job at Stanford.
Yeah.
Tons and tons of hate mail. And now he's the new director of the NIH because of Trump. It's like glorious, from the depths. But we found he was willing to talk to us because we were some of the few people that would actually talk to him.
Yeah.
So we became good friends. And Gabe has really gotten to know him well. There were others. There's an Idaho epidemiologist as well who basically got canceled in Idaho for questioning the narrative, and he's just a neat guy. And so that's what kind of really put us on the map. And then meanwhile, we had planned a conference in Tennessee because at the time Tennessee was one of the more free states, and we thought it was within range of the East Coast, and so that was the idea. Well, Nashville itself was open and then closed, open and then closed, and in like August or something like that, it was closed, and the owners of the place that we had rented said, "Sorry, you can't meet here," and we offered to pay fines and all the rest of it, and they said, "No, we can't do it." And so, like 3 weeks before the conference, we scrambled to find something else nearby. And in Franklin, Tennessee, just
outside of Nashville,
we found an indoor soccer arena. That what the owner was like, sure, you can put chairs in there and a stage. And so we set up chairs and a stage, and about 1,000 people descended in Franklin, Tennessee.
Yeah, that's amazing.
that was awesome.
Soccer field, and and for many people, it was the first time they'd been in a crowd for months.
Yes.
Many of them had churches that had shut down. Nobody had been, and it was a crowd, 1,000 people, and no masks.
Yeah.
Which is normal.
Was there anybody crying there just
Oh,
with joy that they could be around people?
It was.
I'm sure there was.
There probably was. I would say, but for many, like I mean, we one of the things we're doing is we've brought Aaron Snell almost every year to lead the psalm singing. He's the choir director at Logos School in Moscow,
Right.
and so we're trying to. A lot of our audience is just a very broad, diverse group. There's a number of CREC folks, but it's a lot of just Bible church, community church, Baptist church, America, and
they don't know the Psalms.
and they don't know the Psalms, and they don't know part singing. They don't know anything like that, and so that's been one of our goals. Is we wanted to sort of bring some of the Moscow ethos out into the world, because we know so some people will make it to Moscow for Grace Agenda or for one of our conferences, which is great. But it's a little bit of a to-do to get all the way to northern Idaho, and so part of our goal was let's bring a little bit of Moscow out into the world. And so we, teaching Psalms, but I think like for a lot of people, that was probably the closest thing they'd had to a church service in months. And then just seeing people face to face and no weirdness and handshakes and hugs and all the rest of it. We did have the cops called on us, and the cops showed up, and they said, well, just want to make sure that you know that it is perfectly legal what you're doing. We said, thank you for letting us know.
Awesome.
That's wonderful for you to tell us. But I think they had to tell us something to like say that they had come or whatever. But it was perfectly legal in Franklin, Tennessee, to do what we were doing. But I think it's probably one of the only conferences that met in person that year.
Yeah.
Wow.
I bet it was.
Maybe in the West, I don't know, but it was like about 1,000 people, indoor soccer arena, and it was glorious. And so. That kicked off what became, we did another one in the spring just because COVID was still kind of cranking, and then another one in the fall. We've now done, I think, 7 conferences over the last 6 years, and the podcast has continued to grow, and we've kind of morphed the exact format here and there, and sometimes it's been a daily show, and right now we're at about a 3 times a week show, and but yeah, it's we continue to try to bring the Word of God and apply it directly to politics.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a fantastic thing. The COVID thing, and the particularly the CREC's response to the COVID thing.
Yeah.
Where we caught on early that we were being played.
Right.
And we said
Right.
And that's been so attractive.
Right.
To people.
Right. Yeah, Pastor Wilson likes to say that during COVID, the CREC found its inner Reconstructionist. But it was like, this sort of, but it's really glorious. Just at the very, very least, a deep commitment to the way that God has actually ordained authority to work.
Yes.
Was actually a big part of this that we all shared, which was, the Bible says that the family government is given particular responsibility for healthcare decisions, not the state, and the church has authority over worship, not the state.
Yeah,
the state has a God ordained authority to execute evildoers and to protect the innocent and so forth, but those are very limited and they're very different roles, and so he's just even on the face of it is like that's not your job.
Yeah.
Like you don't get to tell me what I do with the health care of my family.
Right.
That's God has given that task to me. It's entrusted to husbands to love their wives as their own bodies. That's health care.
Yeah, and you don't get to say you're only allowed to be 6 feet apart.
Right.
To worshipers of God.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. And a bit, it was very, very encouraging. There's been, and I think I've said a number of times that I think God and there were certainly real hardships that happened in COVID, and there were really unfortunate things. I think particularly the way we treated the elderly in nursing homes and in hospitals is just egregious, just absolutely wicked.
It was terrible.
What we did. My wife's grandparents died in a nursing home in Maryland, and the last time we saw them was through glass.
That's horrible.
We outside the nursing home, and we were not allowed inside to see them.
Yeah.
And but we were allowed to hand in a cell phone that a nurse took in, helpfully for them to hold and talk on, because cell phones have no germs on them.
No, they don't
at
Yeah,
all.
of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It's just mind-boggling. So there's real terrible things that happened. At the same time, I would say, zoom out, big picture. I think COVID has been one of the greatest gifts that God gave the church.
I think so too.
Because what he did was he lowered the bar and said, basically, look, here's how you can win. Be open, don't require masks, and preach the gospel.
Yeah.
It's just like it was that, and so it was like the CREC and a bunch of Calvary chapels.
Yeah, that's right. and some Reformed Baptists.
Yeah,
In Canada it was the Baptists.
I know. Yeah, and John MacArthur. John MacArthur. He and I think one of the things that was glorious about MacArthur is that he did a 360.
Yeah.
He was, or 180, I guess is the right word. He did, because he actually announced initially, we're going to follow the COVID regulations. We think we should, Romans 13 and submit. And 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, they issued a new statement. And they said, never mind. We don't think that the civil government has authority to tell us what to do about church. We're going to meet anyways. Come get us. Mm-hmm. And he just started preaching. Yeah. And the crowds gathered.
Yeah.
So much respect for MacArthur for that stand, and took a lot of flack from it from fellow Reformed Baptists, but a whole bunch of other Reformed Baptists followed the lead as well. Yeah. But it's just this glorious moment where God said, look, here's how you can win. Be open, in person, no masks, worship the Lord, and let and I think CREC churches in particular blew up. But basically, any church that was like, we're going to stay open, and we're going to preach the gospel, and anyone's welcome, come,
also blew up.
A lot of Calvary chapels, a lot of Reformed Baptists.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think a lot of what we saw at that time was it's not whether you're going to follow regulations, but whose regulations are you going to follow?
Yes.
Right? There are regulations about church, and they're in God's word, and you can have regulations coming from the government or God's word, but I think so much of evangelicalism would probably say that there aren't really regulations about church. Like, church is kind of elective. It's kind of optional. It's whether you feel like it, because we don't want to be legalistic. And I think this really shone a spotlight on, we don't really have the option of
it's an essential service.
It's an essential thing.
Yes.
And we can't just live like it was an optional. So it's okay to, just follow the government's regulations on this, because it was kind of it was neither here nor there if you really went anyway.
Right.
So
the whole if we just go online, that's sufficient. Really quickly was no, it's not.
No, it doesn't make any sense.
No, okay, if somebody is literally, bedridden, whatever, but that's not normal. That's not healthy. And then when the California government was and you can't sing. You can gather with only, you and 7 other people standing 6 feet apart or whatever, and with masks, but no singing. You're no. Actually, the Word of God regulates worship, and God, we can't worship without singing. We have to sing.
Yeah.
And the Lord's Supper, we have to celebrate the Lord's Supper, and we have to break bread. We have to.
They warned about those things up here
too. Yes.
And some of the churches took it to heart and ran with it even farther. I spoke with an old fellow from the Anglican communion here in town after a couple of years, and he was he told me that they still 2 years after are still not allowed to touch those hymn books.
Oh wow!
They're still not allowed to, because they were told that hymn books, you pass viruses somehow through your fingertips on pages.
Golly. Oh wow!
Oh, no handshakes either.
No.
Oh my!
No, yeah. So
it's ridiculous.
I think it's been it's been a real sorting God was like, let's shake, let's shake the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. And and I think that's been really, really glorious and really, really helpful. And I think the Lord's done that in Canada, in particular.
Yeah, and I guess let's kind of divert to Canada now, because you've gotten to know, I think, James Coates and Tim Stevens a bit over the last 5 years through Crosspolitic.
Yes.
Just in the last couple of years, you visited Fort St. John. You've gotten to know Cochrane, CREC a bit, us, and now you're visiting us this weekend.
Yeah.
So do you have any thoughts on the Canadian church or exhortations to us?
The thing that I would say that I've said this a number of times, but Jesus takes the persecution of his people personally.
Yes.
So when Saul is knocked off his donkey, is knocked off his horse going up to Damascus to persecute Christians, Jesus says, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?
Yeah.
Right?
Me. Yeah.
So we are his body, and Jesus takes it personally. You are persecuting me. And so the thing that we were watching there were some draconian things happening in the States. And some of the, there were some massive fines racked up by particularly some of the Calvary Chapel churches and similar, John MacArthur's church. Gabe was arrested when we did an outdoor psalm sing with a couple others from our so there was draconian things happening. But from our vantage point, we thought it was far worse in Canada because of what they did to James Coates, putting barbed wire fences around.
They didn't just imprison him; they imprisoned the church, and it got on. It didn't make the major news, but it got everywhere.
Yeah,
those pictures.
Oh, I know.
Of the imprisoned Grace Bible Fellowship.
Yes. Oh, I know.
Or whatever that place was called. Grace.
It's become iconic.
Yeah,
it has.
It was just remarkable, and so we were interviewing people on the ground there.
Yeah.
We were talking to Pastor James. And he was imprisoned. I don't remember the exact length of time, but
I think it was about 6 weeks.
Yeah, I think it was him, if I remember right, one of the Canadian pastors that spent time in prison. That the very day he was taken in to custody, they released a sex offender from the same prison
in order to make room for him,
and sent a warning out to the community saying, "We think this guy is likely to reoffend."
Oh,
wow!
I didn't even hear about that.
Yeah, I heard about
it. It was just like insane.
Yeah,
absolutely insane. And so
talk about punishing good and rewarding evil.
Oh yeah,
it was the upside down world.
Completely upside down world. And even if you actually believed the health concerns, like a little virus is not anything close to a sex offender, kind of just.
It's a demonic mindset.
Absolutely, but so we were watching, and I think, and so my big thought has been, Canada has decided to attack Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you're gonna lose. That's been my thought.
Yeah.
You
can't win.
You can't attack him like this, and you get away with it. Absolutely, you will not. You will not. Like it, and Jesus is the best strategist. He is the best tactician. He's the best military general. Right? That's how he's pictured in Revelation. He rides a white horse. He leads the armies of God.
Yes.
So he's leading the armies of Canada now, the saints of Canada. And I don't know how exactly the pathway he's taking to win. But my thought has been, you're in trouble. You can't attack God's people like this and it go well for you. A couple other examples of this. Tim Stevens, who we've also interviewed a couple times. I'm hoping to meet him in person one day. He, I hope maybe you remember his arrest, but that video was just remarkable, where the cops come and they're talking to him and talking to his wife, and his kids are right there at his doorstep, and he's just firmly but graciously explaining, I'm a preacher of the gospel. I can't stop preaching the gospel. I can't stop meeting for worship. No, I won't.
That's amazing.
It was just a glorious picture of just a faithful man. Arguing, pleading, but also just cool. But if this is what you're going to do, okay. And again, it's like, you can't do that to God's servant and him take it like such a godly man. And it's like, oh, this is like, this is Daniel in the lion's den. This is the three friends being thrown into the furnace. He's the glorious thing. So he's taken in, spends, I don't know how long he was spent in prison, but he was in prison for a while, and then released, and of course harassed and all the rest of it, and fines. But during his ministry, one of the cops on the police force came to the Lord, started coming to his church, and became a Christian. And then got sick and died. And he requested that Pastor Tim would preach his memorial.
I remember that.
To the whole police force. And you just look at that and you say, go. And Tim just, I don't remember if I listened to the whole message, but I caught snippets of the message as it was shared, and it was just like a glorious, glorious presentation of the gospel. And it was the man that they had persecuted. Proclaiming Christ to them. For them. And I don't know what the fruit of that has been, but it's like, you can't, like, that's powerful. Like, all they have is guns. All they have. And Tim had the power of grace in his heart. What you've done, you did evil to him. You mistreated him. You did terrible injustice to him, and he stood up there and he offered you the words of life. And forgiveness and freedom and life. And that's just powerful. And what's happened? Well, all these faithful churches have exploded. Blowing up with people. It's remarkable. And
Tim does a conference in Calgary, and 1,500 people come to it.
All James Coates' church blew up. Jacob Rayome's church is blown up. Tim Stevens' church is blown up. Your guys' church is growing. The CREC churches that I know of are all growing. There's a church in near Toronto.
Whitestone.
Yes, and they're exploding. And it's just, anyways, I think it's, I think we have our work cut out for us in Canada. I would say, I flew up yesterday, and in the airport in Edmonton, I can feel viscerally the darkness. More in Canada. I don't know if that.
I see what you're saying.
I don't know if that makes sense at all, but just in the airport. I was in the airport, and I was just like, oh, this is different. It's darker here. It's just heavier.
Spiritual oppression.
And it's just, and I was just in the restaurant, and I was getting dinner, and I was just sort of like, just the feel of it all. I was almost like, I just need to get my Bible out and start reading. That's how I felt. I just felt that way. And so it's dark. There's a real spiritual oppression on this land. And I know that the people that currently have the levers of power politically, have no intention of turning around, as far as we know. But I would say we have, the way that God loves to do this is he raises up Robin Hoods who live in Sherwood forests that gather all the outcasts and are busy doing good and defying tyranny. And I think that's every faithful church in Canada is a little Sherwood forest with a band of Robin Hoods and merry men. And they are feasting and they are training and they are raising children for the day when King Richard gives the sign. And we have a greater than King Richard, who's not abandoned this place or any of us. And again, I look back and I say they are persecuting Christ, and Christ is not going to let them get away with it.
No.
So I think Reformation is coming sooner or later, and I think you've got some really interesting initial sparks of it going in all these places where the gospel is being proclaimed faithfully, and a true understanding of the governments that God has established, the true understanding of what God has established civil government for and what it's not established for, an understanding of free markets and free Christians. That whole thing, I think, is potent. So I don't know how Jesus is going to do it, but that's my thought. I think it's just a matter of time.
I was thinking about the and lamenting early on how many churches in Canada just bowed the knee and went along with stuff, and it seemed like they were just everywhere where that was happening. But that story, I was reminded much of that story of Jonathan and his armor bearer. They're going over to the Philistine camp to see what's going on, and him telling his armor bearer, the Lord can save by many or by few,
Right.
And you see, everyone sees on their cell phone, James Coates has been arrested. He's been imprisoned for doing this, and everyone saw his church, and you can bet that every trucker in Canada saw that.
Yeah, that trucker convoy would be another one of those things where it's like, I thank you for raising that. Like we were interviewing guys in that trucker convoy and down there, and it was, God was doing something.
Yeah, he was.
That was not just a political thing.
Yeah.
They were gathering together for worship. They were gathering together for Bible studies. They were gathering together for prayer meetings, and it was a work of the Holy Spirit. And I know there were people there that didn't know the Lord, but there were a lot of people coming to the Lord.
Yeah.
And I think that was massive. And again, you look at all those things and you say, I know that Jesus is doing something great here. There's a great book called it's either called Defending or Justifying Revolution, something like that, by a guy named Stewart, I think. Anyways, or Seward. My brain's starting to be done. But I think it's called Justifying or Defending Revolution. But one of the really remarkable things is, so it's a study basically of the preachers during the Revolutionary era in America, and what he's answering is the accusation that basically Americans left their robust theology and gave into Enlightenment categories in order to justify the revolution.
Right.
And that it was an Enlightenment rationalist thing and not a Christian thing.
Right.
And he's answering that and saying, no, it absolutely was not. This was driven by a wholly Orthodox, reformational, Protestant resistance theory. That's what he's arguing. It's a really helpful book because he says this is not them giving into Enlightenment. Actually, they're on the record for basically Thomas Paine didn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
Even though they read some of his stuff, that wasn't the foundation at all. But one of the interesting things is he starts about 100 years before the Revolutionary War, before the War for Independence, in the 1670s. And there were some really, really fascinating conflicts in Boston between the pastors and the Christians and the British overlords in the 1670s. And they threw down in the 1670s. And in fact, there was this rogue mayor or judge or something like that was being tyrannical. And the pastors preached some sermons, and the people went and they hauled him out of his office and threw him in jail, and then sent him back home to Great Britain and said, that's illegal what you're doing. It's unjust. And it was all based on, because God's word says that a civil government exists on covenantal grounds. Covenantal grounds based on what God has said about what civil rulers can and cannot do, and then the people in covenant with those civil rulers under God. And they said that's the basis of English common law rule, and this guy's being a rogue and a tyrant, and we're not going to stand for it. And so in the name of God, you're arrested, and in the name of God, you're going back to England.
Shipped back to England.
But the thing is and the point is that the reason why he raises that instance is because he says it was thoroughly Christian ground. It was thoroughly Christian ground for that resistance.
Right.
Protestant resistance theory. Well, that was 100 years before the War for Independence. Mm-hmm. And I've been thinking ever since I read that, I don't know where we are in the story, but I think even maybe what's happened now, maybe COVID and this whole, the trucker convoy and Gabe being arrested and James Coates being thrown in prison and Tim Stevens and all this stuff. Maybe this is the beginning. Mm-hmm. And it might take 100 years.
Birth pangs.
But we have for the last 100 years haven't been studying Protestant resistance theory. For the last 100 years, we've not been studying the right role of civil government. Mm-hmm. And all of us are all of a sudden recovering it and saying, wait a second, there were hundreds of years of our Protestant forebears who worked this out, from John Calvin to the Huguenots to John Knox to Samuel Rutherford and to the founders of America and many of the founders of Canada were committed Protestants who understood Protestant political theory. Yeah. And all of a sudden in COVID, everybody was like, wait a second, are you allowed to do this? And everybody found their inner Reconstructionist that cared and said, no, you're not. The Word of God speaks to this. And so I think if it took 100 years in the founding of America for there to be this, no, you don't. I'm not saying that it needs to end in war. I don't wish for war. But if it takes a substantial minority or majority of people to get there, well, we got time. And in 3 generations or so, maybe the Lord will give us that full reformation.
Yeah. That darkness that you described in the airport, I have felt like that since COVID really was announced. Like it's dark and oppressive. Yeah. And pronounced and heavy. But that the trucker convoy was a moment for me where it was like that darkness is heavy and pronounced and very present, but man, is it fragile.
Yeah, because it sure lifted that day.
Yeah. That day, it was just pop. Yeah. And it was like, you take a breath and you just feel like that's what freedom feels like.
Yes.
That day that the truckers arrived in Ottawa, there were sympathy convoys in every city in Western Canada, including here.
Yes.
I was in that parade.
Yes.
And the parade route was 24 kilometers long around the city and back.
Wow.
And 23 of it was covered with cars and trucks honking.
Wow.
I was helping a friend.
Yeah.
I was helping a friend that day who wanted to get into the convoy and their alternator died that day. And so I was running around to get parts for them and help get it put in and stuff. And I'm seeing these vehicles and the cheering and the waving and really like the humanity.
Yes. Yeah, it was so wonderful.
Yes.
It was I just broke down several times and cried because it was just you don't realize how smothering and oppressive Canada has really gotten.
Yeah.
Yes.
Until something like that just pops.
I remember seeing I think early on in the shutdown, I saw a video, we played it on Crosspolitic, of this guy who wanted to play hockey outdoors by himself. He was just skating with a puck and stick, and this lady cop comes and arrests him. And I just thought, oh, Canada, you're just like, this is like hockey outdoors, skating on a little patch of ice. And a lady cop just took you down.
The nanny state.
That's my metaphor. Like for my mind, I'm like, I'm praying for the day in which, and what was really sad is there's a guy like videotaping it, his friend, doing nothing, and a couple other bystanders just watching.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, you'll know Reformation has come to Canada when all the guys say, no, ma'am.
We're going to keep playing hockey.
We're going to keep playing hockey, and you need to go home. And because
because that's unlawful.
Because what you're doing isn't lawful.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's like you think about. I mean, my dad played hockey in college, and being from Alaska and everything, and so there's a little place. I never played it, but I watch it, and I really appreciate it. And but it's like. And I know it can be nasty and dirty, and there's cultural things connected to it that aren't most Christian, but there's something glorious about men fighting on ice.
Yeah.
And there's something glorious about a game that's that rough
and that fast
and the skill involved in all of it. And so I have a deep respect. I have a deep respect for it. I know that's a glorious thing to Canadians. But I think to myself, that's not. It's just you're just playing games. If you don't live that way, you're just make believe on ice. If you don't actually live that way, if you don't actually live like a dangerous man in your family, if you don't live like a good and dangerous man in your community, if you don't live like that in your church, if you're not creating space to live like a free man, then it's like. That as soon as the first lady cop comes, you're down. Like that's you are. I mean that's a picture though of the nanny state. That's a picture of the way feminism is captured. And I think but I know that there are still thousands that have not bent the knee.
Yeah.
And God has His remnant, and He's protecting them and preserving them, and He's going to raise them up.
Yeah, so if I can pitch in on this for a minute too. I'm 33 years old. I grew up in Toronto. My dad explained to me pretty young what was going on in Toronto. Like when I was 7 or 8, I knew that gay pride parades were happening and stuff like that. I've had this sense my entire lifetime that Canada is in decline, that the church at large is in decline, that Christians are growing more compromising. When that Freedom Convoy hit and I saw a number of Reformed Christians, not necessarily pastors headed to Ottawa, but Reformed Christians, I was like, okay, people are waking up.
Yeah.
This is something that I've never seen Christians push back in such a large mass as what happened during the Freedom Convoy. Yeah. And I mean, it didn't change everything, obviously.
Right.
But that was huge. I actually saw Canadians turning and saying, no, we actually have to stand up for what we believe.
Right. The other thing to keep in mind is that, I mean, Jesus is saving the whole world.
Yeah.
And so we're in and the way that we're post-millennial, we believe that because Jesus gave us the Great Commission, He's going to accomplish it. And but He accomplishes it in His way, and it's not like a space shuttle just launching.
Yeah,
it's that's not, the kingdom doesn't come that way. Yeah. The kingdom is coming more like leaven in a loaf. It's coming more like a mustard seed growing into a tree, which just like Jesus said, which means that you have different seasons. There's seasons of real great growth, and there's other seasons where it looks a bit wilted. And it's lost its leaves, and you hope it makes it through another. But the thing is that God's at work, Christ is at work in every part of this globe. And one of the things to keep in mind too is that Christianity is absolutely exploding in the Southern Hemisphere.
Yes,
it's exploding in South America. It's exploding in Africa,
India,
and in China, and so I was told not too long ago that there are now more missionaries going into Britain than out.
Yeah, probably.
And many of them are coming from Africa.
Yeah, we have African missionaries in our town.
Yeah. So it's that, but it's like this is glorious how God does it, and He does it in order to magnify His glory, and He does it in order for us to know that it's Him and not us.
Yes.
He does it His way so that we don't think we get the credit.
Yeah.
But it's like here we are. At one time, the UK and the Americas, Canada sent out the most missionaries, and now it's sadly declined, and it's inverting, it's reversing now, and now it's these nations that we once were discipling, that they're sending their missionaries over here to re-disciple us, which praise the Lord.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the other thing to keep in mind, though, is that God, it's like, obviously we have our job to do, and we have an assignment to be faithful at our posts. And when you've been assigned to Canada, then you're faithful to Canada. You're assigned to the United States. You're faithful to the United States. We're to disciple the nations, and so we've got our marching orders. Mm-hmm. But God also can send in unexpected reinforcements.
Yeah.
And in the next 50 years, I can't remember the exact number, but there'll be more Christians in Africa than anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of them. It's baby Christianity in a lot of places, but there's growing Reformed pockets, and I think it's going to be an interesting, fun ride. But it's like it's not like Christ is like, man, I've got it. I'm limited.
Yeah.
I mean, he can save with many or few.
Yes.
But he also is like, I could send a
battalion from Ghana.
And it's a battalion of Africans.
Send a few Spanish and African pastors to Canada.
And he could take it back at any moment, at any time.
In our church, there's been a young lady coming, and we've spoken with her a few times. She's from Ghana, and it made me curious, and so I went online looking at the religious makeup of Ghana.
Yeah.
I remember as a kid when there was mission movements and missionaries were going out. That was one of the targets.
Right.
Was Ghana.
Right.
You go and look at the stats on religious affiliation in Ghana, and the Presbyterians and the Anglicans make up about 55% of Ghana, and the Roman Catholics about 19%. And it was 80% Christian, 20% not.
Yeah.
In Ghana.
Yeah.
No wonder they're sending us missionaries.
No, it's glorious. It's absolutely glorious. So, no, it's I think the Lord knows what He's doing.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be a great ride.
Indeed.
We should probably start winding down, but before you give the closing word, I do want to ask Toby, what books have you written?
Oh, let's see here. I'll go backwards. My most recent one that's been published is called No Mere Mortals, which is about marriage for people who will live forever, and so that's my most recent one. Before that, Blood-Bought World, which is kind of a scattershot of thoughts on basically why modern Christians aren't as potent as they should be. They don't take the Bible as seriously as they should, basically, is what it boils down to. Blood-Bought World. And then, let's see, what else have I done? Oh, I did a commentary on the book of Job. Job Through New Eyes, A Son for Glory is the name of that. And then before that, I don't remember what I did. I did an edition of one of Edmund Spencer's books of The Fairy Queen.
Okay.
I did an updated and annotated version of book 2, and I think that's most of it. I've contributed a number of essays to the Omnibus series for the Omnibus curriculum that Veritas Press published, and some other curriculum guides along the way for Canon Press as well.
And you've got a Substack on Reformed civics.
Yes. I need to get back to that, but it's been a few months. But yes, I teach a civics class at Logos, and I've been slowly taking some of my notes from that class and turning those into essays to sort of help feed the cause of thinking about civics and political theory from a biblical Christian worldview.
Yeah, that's excellent. Some of us have used that in our morning theology meetings. We've used your Reformed civics.
On YouTube.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
YouTube
And I've recorded a number of them on
those.
YouTube as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, this has been a delightful conversation. Yeah. It's been really good to have you here, Toby.
Thank you.
And you too, Jesse. It's been good to have you here, and a good discussion, good things that the Lord is doing. We are the Chinook podcast. We are here in Grand Prairie. If you are in this area and you need a church to go to, come and visit us at Christ Covenant Church. We would be delighted to see you and talk to you. And who knows what the Lord might do? Perhaps He's calling you to come in to His kingdom and into His church. So it's our delight to be able to present a conversation like this to you, and we hope by the Lord's grace that you have an excellent day. Bye-bye.
Bye.